Thank you for joining us today on the Rescue and Revive Gospel Show. The Gospel Show is a branch of Rescue and Revive Ministries, a mobile gospel ministry that seeks to preach the gospel, teach the gospel, and reach all. To find out more, visit us at rescueandrevive.org. Again, that's rescueandrevive.org. God bless you, and enjoy the show.
Well, hello, everybody, today. Hello to Facebook Live, and also to those listening in on WYSL, the Voice of Liberty, Rescue and Revive Gospel Show. We have a special guest with us today, Frank Irace, the founder of Impact Theater. Frank, thanks for making the long trek, as you described. Yeah. Where'd you drive in from?
Actually, I came from Webster, work. Right. So
how many miles do you think it was, roughly?
I don't know. I think it's about 30, 35. But to home, it's about an hour.
Right. So an hour. But first, we got to eat Italian sausage.
First, we got to have some Italian. We actually come to, the only time I'm usually around here is Fratelli's.
Yes.
I come with some dear friends. Shout out to the Stamps. But, we usually come here and eat at Fratelli's.
We get free plugs all the time, Bob, right? Bob knows this. Last time they got a free plug at Fratelli's. He says he does.
Eat at Fratelli's, everyone.
They take good care of us. That's great.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it was closer to come from work, so here I am. But thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to the interview. So let's open in a word of prayer, and then we'll get right into it.
Yeah.
All right. Heavenly Father, thank you.
Yeah.
Opportunity. Just pray for your blessing, Lord, as we're live here. But Lord, this will go on the air as well in the future. So Lord, let it just resonate. I think about what it says in Romans chapter 10, that their sound went into all the earth. So I just pray that would happen for your glory in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So let's get down to it.
All right. I don't like a mic in my face, but I'll keep it working. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to speak up to it? All right, there we go.
So I'm excited because we get to have lunch together.
Yeah.
Because we talked about it, like I said, 3-4 years ago.
That's right.
And we were at a funeral, which myself and Pastor Scott Justice were presiding over. Was a gentleman who was very special to your ministry.
Yes, yeah,
which I'm sure you'll never forget. Bill was a very special man. He definitely touched my life for the brief amount of time that I knew him. So we talked about getting lunch, and years passed. So I figure I have to get Frank into the radio show. That way I got him for lunch at Calabrasella.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting? We got Fratelli's, Calabrasella. This must be some Italian town or something
Italian
like
neighborhood?
This. Yes.
All right, good.
So
good. I'm comfortable.
I'm excited about the lunch. Yeah. But I just taught on John 6 about don't labor for the meat that perishes. So let's go into the everlasting meat now, the meat that will last into everlasting life.
Yes, amen.
So tell us, because this ministry is it 20 years now?
20, yeah. This is
20 years Impact Theater.
Yeah.
A very unique gospel ministry. You use drama, you use skits in a not a watered down way. I know that you call yourselves the in your face players. Yeah. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I've seen you perform at Project Restore in Geneva years ago. It is definitely the real deal gospel. You don't hold back.
Thanks.
20 years, if something can last 20 years, that's probably a pretty good indication to some extent that God's in the center of it. So tell us, Frank, a little bit about the origin of Impact Theater.
Okay, so originally from New York City.
Right.
I grew up on Broadway, unsaved, of course. And if you know anything about Hollywood and Broadway, it's a cesspool.
Right.
So, I got involved a lot of the things that go on in the Broadway scene, and I don't have to go too in depth into it, but needless to say, I believe God used Broadway. I used to get free tickets. Right. My friend's father used to paint the backdrops to the Schubert organization. We used to get free tickets, and we used to go out and see every play on Broadway for free. And this was at a time when everybody was wearing caps and gowns and tuxes.
Sure.
You couldn't get in, and here we are with ripped up jeans and T-shirts and just a bunch of rugrats. But what it did, it gave me a love for the arts, and it gave me a love for theater. And when the Lord took me out of that, I was doing a lot of things behind the scenes, not such good things, and the Lord took me out of that, and I began to write my own plays, and I began to write Christian-themed plays, and then fast forward, I moved up here, and I said, you know what? I just felt the Lord calling me into the Christian arts. I saw a lot of talent in the church, but many times that talent was either watered down, or when they played in bars, and they compromised the message of the gospel so that they could play anywhere, right? Because how many of you know, if you talk Jesus and you talk the real gospel, you're not going to be welcome in every area of the country, okay? But I started to say, for me, you know, I want to do this right, you know, and I want to bring artists in who want to do it, you know, at least at Impact Theater, present a gospel message. If normally they go out somewhere else and they do it in a bar and they want to, you know, compromise their message, or they don't want to play that message, at Impact I required that they did. So that's what Impact really is. The in-your-face players, the term came actually from an old DC Talk rap song, where they said, we want to put God's word right up in your face. And so, you know, I took that and I said, that's us. That's what we want to do. We want to present the gospel in its raw form, because how many know that life is hard? Life is not easy, and I'll share some stories about that. But you know, we want to present that life, and the arts allow you to do that, to present life in its raw form, and then present the hope that is to come, and the answer to all the problems that we face.
And again, thank you for sharing that very eloquently. But again, 20 years here in this area. But the seed was back in New York City, which I could never tell by your accent or by your shirt. You're from New York City.
Go Mets!
Right.
Yeah.
But that the seed was, so God used this how you were drawn to arts and theater and all this. Then you come over here, and you said you come. So when was your salvation experience or encounter exactly? Is it one that you remember specifically, or not so much?
Well, yeah. Let me just go back a little, because I don't like talking too much testimony. Because a lot of times testimonies become
ceremony.
Yeah. Amen. So I'll just say that, you know, I had a life of bad things happen growing up in Harlem, and I blamed everybody else for it. And as a result, it caused a lot of hate and anger within my own life. But I saw a love when I started working for a company. I worked next to a brother who was a reverend part-time.
Great.
And this guy just kept talking Jesus to me to the point where he irritated me. But there was a rub there. And long story short, he kept inviting me to these meetings on 92nd Street Church in Harlem there. And I kept refusing. Finally, I relented and went, just because I wanted this guy off my back.
Right.
And let me tell you, brother, I walked in that door that day. I remember specifically, I came from the gym. I deliberately didn't shower because I wanted to spite this guy. So I wanted to make sure that I smelled.
Did you wear deodorant?
Nothing.
No, okay.
Man, I would have came naked if I could, but I came smelling. I wanted to just leave this, like, get this guy off my back. I walk in this door of this little church, and it's hopping, you know, with the Spirit of the Lord. People are just joyous and rejoicing, and I was just a miserable person, having been raped and blaming everybody for everything that was going on in my life. And I hated. And I walked in this door, and I'll never forget this. There was a heavy-set brother, and I walk in the door, and I didn't have a father. I grew up, you know, without a father. And he wrapped his arms around me, and he said, "Welcome, brother. I love you."
That's sweet.
Didn't give me the gospel, right? Not there. We're not on the spot. Didn't ask me if I knew Jesus. He wrapped his arms around me and hugged me, and at that moment, he didn't care what I looked like, how I smelled. I felt my heart just melt.
Wow.
And of course, being around gangs and all this my whole life, I saw Brother Dan, who was the part-time reverend there. I composed myself, and I said, this guy's not going to break me. So I kind of pushed him a little. He let me go. I made my way to Dan, like, say, hey, I'm here.
Yeah.
Okay. But long story short, by the end of that night, when they did an altar call, I was there at the altar, crying out to God for forgiveness and repenting and recognizing everything that I had done and spitting in his face my whole life. And I must have been at that altar probably for a good hour.
Wow.
You know, and I came out of there wanted to talk to everybody. I talked to he took me to Burger King. I was in the Burger King, cashier. I was preaching to her. I was on fire. The taxi driver. Yes. There's something about when God grabs our hearts, right? We want to talk about him. Yeah. It concerns me when Christians don't want to talk about him. Right. So
that's a great testimony. What year was that? Do you remember the year?
Woo! 81.
So you're going back quite some time.
Yeah.
Wow. Powerful testimony. Let me ask you a little bit. One of the places that your troupe performs is the Fringe Festival. Is that correct?
It is, yes.
And from talking to you, one thing I recall you saying is the Fringe Festival, that is, am I right in saying that's probably a predominantly secular lost crowd? Yes, am I right in saying that?
That is totally correct.
And so tell us a little bit about how you prayerfully approach that, preparing your skits, your gospel-centered skits for that crowd, and what have been some of the reactions, maybe a quick testimony or two in regards to that, the Fringe Festival.
So one of the reasons Impact Theater, we started traveling is to get into these communities, okay? There is a large community of people who will not come into a church, right? We know that. And the arts are, they span a broad category, right? You can reach in and talk anything in the arts. You can talk gangster rap. You can talk books. So when you listen to a book, go to a play, or read a book, I should say, go to a play, listen to a song, you're in essence taking that artist's philosophy of life into your heart and mind. So when I started Impact Theater, it was with the intent, as we started to travel, to go into communities with the gospel-centered arts. So we can go into, as you mentioned, the Fringe Festival, which is a largely secular venue.
Which is where you want to be.
And that's where we want to be. Now, having said that, it is also a large, the arts in general, but the Fringe is a large population of LGBT. Okay, which they, for some reason, many reasons, believe that Christianity is very hostile towards them. Okay, so when we go in there, we go prayerfully, knowing that our message is there's gonna be a rub. Okay. And the way you call them skits, I want to just correct that a little bit. It's actually a play. Okay. Skits are little venues. It's a full play. That's a good point. Yeah. Right. So what I deliberately do is when I write a play is what I try to do is break down, and it's no different with A Fork in the Road, our latest play. My latest play is I try to break down all of the arguments against God. Okay. So the first half, we're talking about God and his existence, because if I could break that down intellectually, okay, apologetically, and then I can open, hopefully, someone whose heart is open, because how many know that it's nothing about me or my actors, it's God who's drawing those people, right? So if there's someone whose heart is ready, they can at least intellectually go, okay, I'll buy that there's a God. And then I start to strip that down, and in the second half, I say, okay, now we've got you there. Now let's talk about how to get to that God, how to find that God, right? Yeah. And that's where the gospel comes in. So in the beginning, like some of the reactions you mentioned, there's the beginning where this couple who's unsaved is kind of mocking God, and you get people in the audience chuckling. They think that's great. Sure, yeah. But as they start to hear the message, okay, and they start to say, oh, wait a minute, this isn't going the way I wanted it to go. I wanted the mocking to continue. Right. They start to see that, oh, wait a minute, they
start to peel back the layer. I see the real
peeling this back. Right. And they're talking to me. These guys are talking to me now. So the reactions I've gotten is, last year, for instance, somebody just blatantly, just rude, got up, walked out, slammed the door. Sometimes you get somebody yelling back. Right. But I want to tell you, those are the negatives. Let me give you a positive, okay? Because this is God. God is a friend of sinners, okay? Yes. So not this last year, the year before, when we were at the Fringe, we did our thing. At the end, I always leave myself open, and this beautiful Jewish older woman comes up to me, and she's going up one side, me down the other. How dare you do this here?
Right.
Don't you know I'm Jewish? How could they give you the venue to do this? And she's going up, and I'm listening to her and smiling. And in the corner of my eye, I see this young woman who came with her partner. Okay. And she was a lesbian. I was waiting for this Jewish lady to finish, and she did. And I said, okay, I'm going to get it again now from this woman, the lesbian. And she comes up and she just says, I just want you to know you touched me tonight. And I want you to know that I needed to hear your message. And I will be back, because we were going to play that 2 more days. She said, I will be back with friends.
That's powerful.
And I thought that was just rhetoric. She came back the next 2 nights with
friends,
lesbian friends.
Yeah.
And that's God, right? That's how God reached me. That's how God reaches you.
Exactly.
Everybody has that kind of testimony that someone was willing to tell them the truth and the gospel. Okay. So for the older Jewish woman, I pray
different
for her.
reactions.
Different reactions, right?
And it's always been that way. You look in, one of the things I've often loved about evangelism, about proclaiming Christ, preaching the gospel, is that I never feel an ounce of responsibility for the results.
Amen.
And I know you can relate to that. So as you're speaking, you're talking to this Jewish woman, she's very upset at you, and it's almost like there's Jesus says, hey, rejoice in that. So they persecuted the prophets that were before you. So you understand that, but then you have this woman you were just talking about that God evidently deeply touched.
Amen.
And for her to come back with a couple friends, that says a lot.
Amen.
That says a lot. Only God can do that.
That's right.
Powerful testimony.
Only God can do
Powerful testimonies. I'm sure you have plenty of them over the course of 20 years. Let me transition a little bit. We got about 8 or 9 minutes left.
Okay.
Your schedule, because I know, and forgive me, the skit, there's kind of, I know, sometimes a negative connotation attached with the skit.
Yeah, I'll tell you why. How simple it is the seeker-friendly movement took that skit thing and ran with it.
I understand it completely.
Okay. So,
I understand completely. I will never use skit again in your presence, Frank. Okay, no, but really, I get that. So let's go back to a play. What would you say, how much work, how much time, and I know you have your troupe and you have some really devoted members of that troupe, right? How much time would you say, in general, just a couple minutes, does it take to get ready, prepare for one of these plays?
Well, we go from September to April.
Okay.
We end, and then we get right. I give them a month off. We get right back into rehearsals.
A lot of time.
So it's literally all summer long.
How long do you practice, or how long do you rehearse?
Once a week, couple of hours a week.
Good. Wow.
All right. And let me say this, and in between that, I work them. I am blessed. I'm blessed with some great servants.
Right.
And in between all that, we're doing other things, other outreaches. We work with a group of women in rehab, and we do little concerts and barbecues out. So they're working even during that. So we do other things. And then come together and work on these plays also.
It's a sweet ministry. And let me peel back one more layer. Let me kind of give a little bit different flavor to this, to the interview. So we've been talking about outer, right? This is obviously an evangelistic ministry, gospel-centered. But sometimes, in one of the reasons for Rescue and Revive Ministry is not only preaching the gospel, but teaching the gospel. So the gospel is not just for the lost, it's also for the saved. So let me turn into your troupe. Over the course of 20 years, do you have maybe one quick testimony about how somebody in your troupe was impacted by rehearsal, or something you said as the leader, or something that just happened that really touched them, maybe in a similar manner to the young lady, the lesbian you were telling us about?
Yeah, well, good question, man. I could say this, that Lisa, who's Lisa
Wheeler.
Lisa,
I'm going to name drop, man.
Terrific.
Yes, Ron and Lisa Wheeler.
Terrific.
Ron and Lisa, how are you? Yes.
Terrific sister, right?
Yep.
But she came to many people who join Impact come from our audience to the stage. But Lisa, she'll tell you this. This is kind of a testimony. She was going through a rough time, and she found healing as an audience member one night, and then she had asked to join.
That's awesome.
So she was coming, I think, frequently, and from what I remember, she'd have to correct me on this, but she was alone. She'd come alone, and she came from the audience to the stage. She asked to join, and she has just been a blessing.
A big part of the ministry.
And been a huge part of the ministry ever since she's come on board. And that's just kind of a small testimony of that. We've had other people, I think, with the exception of maybe 2 or 3 people over the time, because, it's a revolving door at times. But most people come from stage from audience to stage. The wannabes, they want to be. And then when they find out the hard work behind it,
you gotta be
they drop out.
Yep,
and when they find out what we teach,